Okay, good morning. Still morning, just about. We're off out today to another location, this time one we've never been to before. It's a museum marking some special, well, I say special in a bad way, special events in Indonesia and Jakarta's history. So yeah, we're going to go and check that out. It's in the south east part of Jakarta, past Halim Airport. So yeah, we're going to go and check that out. Yeah, we'll see what we can find. Okay, so we're here at the Museum Penghianatan. I can never say it right. Penghianatan PKI.
Penghianatan.
Better. Yeah. Communists. Yeah, so a very interesting museum. Talks all about the September 30th movement, the PKI's movement against the government and against 7 army officers that were shot and killed, and they were dumped here at a special location here. Let me show you that slightly later in the video. So yeah, very interesting museum here in South Jakarta, just past Halim Airport. And yeah, definitely worth a visit if you want to learn a bit more history about about what happened in Jakarta. In this first exhibit, you can see the 6 army officers, the generals that were killed: Ahmad Yani, Major General Supraprato, Major General Haryono, Major General Parman, Brigadier General Panjaitan, Brigadier General Sotoyo, and finally First Lieutenant Pierre Tendin, plus 3 other officers as well. One of them was killed near Ahmad Yani's house, and 2 more which were also killed in Jakarta. One name not on the list of the deceased generals though was General Nasution, pictured here. He was one of the main targets of the raid, but fortunately for him, he was able to be alerted to the presence of the kidnappers and was able to flee. As you can see in this here, he was able to flee over his wall into the Iranian embassy, which was next door to his property, and you can see here his wife and child watching over as he tries to make his escape. Unfortunately though, his child, his 5-year-old daughter, was shot and killed in the raid. One of the unintended victims of the raid at Nasution's house was one of his aides, Lieutenant Tendin, pictured here. He was only 26 and he was attached to the general to look after him and act as his bodyguard and his aide. And unfortunately, the raiders mistook him for Nasution in the dark and decided to take him with them to be executed. So he was an unfortunate casualty that was never meant to be from the raid at Nasution's house. The next priority target for the raiders was Lieutenant General Ahmad Yani, pictured here. He was the commander of the army at the time. He was one of the prize targets to be taken. He decided to answer his door to the raiders, pictured his military uniform. He was at his home at the time. He saw the raiders coming. He opened the door and then quickly closed it, but unfortunately the raiders decided they were not going to take no for an answer, and they decided to open fire through the door, as you can see here, and they shot and killed him instantly in his kitchen, and then his body was taken away by the raiders. Another general who decided to resist the invaders was Major General Haryono, pictured here. He again saw the raiders, he heard the raiders coming, and decided he wasn't going to go quietly. He decided to try and flee, and he came under gunfire, as pictured. You can see here some of his blood-stained uniforms here as well. He was eventually cornered in an area of his house and then was also shot and killed, and his body was taken away. A third victim, another Major General, was Major General Panjaitan, pictured here. He also decided he wasn't going to go quietly. He asked to pray in the front lawn of his house, and the raiders eventually got irritated with the time he was taking, as you can see here, and they also decided to shoot and kill him and then take his body away. Another one of the generals taken was Major General Supraprato, as pictured here. He went much more quietly than the previous 3 people we saw. He was just taken away on the truck and was taken to the area where the other 3 bodies had already been taken as well. So he went a little bit more quietly. In a moment of unfortunate irony on his part, His wife tried to let the person next door to her know that her husband had been taken. That just also happened to be Major General Parman, who we'll see shortly, who was unfortunately already taken as well. Pictured here is also Brigadier General Sotoyo, the 5th general to be taken out of the 6th. He was also led away quietly by the armed men, and yeah, he was also put on the back of a truck and taken away to be executed, as you can see in this diagram here. The final general on the list was Major General Parman, as pictured here. He was the last of the generals to be rounded up and sent away. And yeah, he also went mostly quietly. He was cornered in a room in his house, as you can see in this video here. He was cornered and yeah, basically sent out and put on a truck and yeah, sent away to the area where the other generals were waiting. Pictured here is the men of the insurgency dumping the bodies down the disused well, which we will see a little bit later. And in this clip here, they're going to see this is when the bodies were found by the authorities and were moved and then eventually reburied in the local cemetery. In this clip, you can see the diagram of the 4 officers who hadn't yet been killed. They were herded into a house where they were. Some said that they were beaten, some said that they were not. But basically, they were all rounded up into this one house, and they were eventually executed as depicted in this diagram here. And also you can see the names on the floor here of the different victims. Again, the 3 generals and the 1 lieutenant who were all rounded up and shot and then eventually dumped in the well. As you can see here, this was one of the houses or the style of house used by the PKI soldiers. This is how it would have looked back in the 1960s, so a very old style of house here. You can see different bedrooms and the living spaces dotted around here, the old style of beds and the old styles of lights on the ceiling as well. And yeah, this was basically where the soldiers of the PKI who staged the uprising basically stayed nearby the well, which we'll see shortly. And yeah, you can see like the old style of bed here hanging up here. You have the potential for like netting to go above the bed as well, and yeah, some very old styles of living here. And here you can see the well that was used to dump the bodies down. I'm not sure if this is still the genuine well or whether it's been rebuilt. I would imagine it's been rebuilt given there are lighting and fake blood inside of it. So yeah, I don't think this is the genuine well, but it basically looks something similar to this. This military vehicle here was used to put the bodies of the murdered officers on top of, and then it was basically driven back into Jakarta, where they were eventually buried, like I said, in the local cemetery. Here we can see the Pancasila monument with the 7 murdered officers immortalised as statues here, with the Pancasila Garuda eagle flying elegantly behind them. Yeah, the one in the middle is Ahmadiyani. He's pointing to the well where his body was dumped in a sort of symbolic gesture there. And yeah, that's the name. That's each of those people there with the 7 generals, 7 officers, should I say, killed in the uprising on September 30th, 1965. There are 2 main building structures located around the complex there. There is a number of indoor exhibits that you can go and visit, as you probably already noticed. Yeah, it's basically just a running history of the entire battle of the Indonesian government against the PKI forces. You can see in some of these drawings here the various meetings that were had by the PKI over the 10 to 20 years that they were in existence, from the 1940s all the way up until 1965, when, of course, after the September 30th movement, the PKI were basically outlawed. Their entire membership was seen as illegal, and they were seen as traitors because they were blamed for the uprising and the killing of these generals. And yeah, their entire organization was essentially wiped out in the 2 to 3 years after the events of the September 30th movement. And this entire museum is basically an oral retelling of that history, and yeah, all the events from a certain perspective. Of course, there are different perspectives of exactly what happened, but this is some of the other events that also happened here as well. So yeah, lots of interesting information if you're into your history, for sure. So, some overall thoughts on the day then. It's a little bit of a journey if you're staying in sort of the central Jakarta area. If you're in the south of the city, it's not so far away to get to. It's pretty accessible. It cost us, what was it, 5,000 for a ticket each, and then a little bit of extra money to park our motorbike as well. So it cost us about, all in all, probably about 25,000 for the both of us to get in. So nice and inexpensive. There's a little bit of food there as well, some street food stalls if you're interested in that as well. So there's a little bit of food and drink there, and there's some indoor areas where you can take shelter from the heat and the rain if that's a problem for you as well. And yeah, there's some good photo opportunities, and also it's useful to know a bit of history about all the stuff that went on during the September 30th movement as well. So yeah, if you're interested in your history about Jakarta, about Indonesia, or you just want something slightly different, by all means come along here and check it out.